Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. That's better. My name is Anthony Price. I'm a council member here at the City Club of Cleveland, a junior at Shaw High School. Thank you for attending today's City Club of Cleveland Youth Forum, The Power of Innovation Part 2. Today's forum will be full of dialogue for our amazing panelists. Every year at the City Club, the Youth Forum Council meets to plan and produce City Club forums for other high school students, where we determine various topics and invite esteemed panelists like today. Today, you will have the opportunity to hear and meet Miss Mel McGee, founder and CEO of We Can Code It, an organization that focuses on diversity in technology and engineering, and also to creating and organizing and implementing, innovative curricula that keeps pace with modern time. Ms. Alison Tanker, founder and director of Tigress, a social enterprise that empowers young women to become confident, passionate, and creative change makers through experimental programs in social entrepreneurship and creative arts. And lastly, Mr. Brian and Tighe. I'm making sure I'm pronouncing his last name right. Co-founder and CEO of BevBench. And I talked to him earlier about his mission. It was so catchy, and it's custom.functional.marketing. I mean, how catchy is that? And much more. And as a young entrepreneur myself, I highly recommend all of you to take this forum as an advantage by connecting, by bridging gaps with other schools, and innovating with others that you didn't have the chance to meet and coming in this forum. And maybe even one day, by meeting someone, you could start your own company or your own network or your own enterprise even. So without further ado, on behalf of the whole Youth Council, I just want to thank all of you for attending our last forum of the school year. So make sure you aggravate your teachers, administrators, and principals that you want to come back to the City Club because it's fun and it's innovative and it's exciting. So without further ado, and before I introduce Phil, who's our moderator for today's event, I was told to make sure your cell phones are on silent. Feel free to tweet, but as far as spreading the message of today's forum, make sure your phones are on silent, and feel free to tweet. Follow someone on Instagram or Twitter and tweet about what's being said in the forum. Now I would like to turn it over to my fellow council member. He's an entrepreneur himself. He's really big in the business. And I would like to turn it over to Mr. Phil Hedayatnia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Can everyone hear me fine? Yes. Okay, awesome. By the way, don't aggravate your school administrators too much, okay? There's a level. So thank you all for being here today. It's going to be a really great discussion. And we actually had a similar discussion earlier this year called The Power of Innovation. And the subject of that forum was talking about the ways that Cleveland's a unique place to be an entrepreneur, to be a businessman, and the challenges that people face in becoming entrepreneurs. What we want to do with this forum especially, though, is we want to focus on youth. We want to focus on all of you, because it's important that the entrepreneurs aren't just the college students or the people in their 30s or 40s, but it's all of us, and that we can make a difference in our community. So we have three fantastic speakers here today. So I just thought, could you just give an overview of who you are and what you've done for the audience?
Sure, I'm Mel McGee. I'm founder and CEO of We Can Code It, and we're about diversity and technology. So we want to empower everyone to become innovative in creation, and become creators in our new century, our new world here.
So.
I'm Alison Tanker, and I'm the founding director of Tigress. I'm a firm believer that entrepreneurship is an excellent tool for empowerment. I've designed my own major in social entrepreneurship in college, and then went on to work internationally with other micro-entrepreneurs and social ventures in Central America and the Caribbean, where I continue to see how empowering moving your ideas into action can be for all people, but specifically women, which was really why I ended up coming home a couple years ago to found this business of Tigress, and will continue my journey of really empowering the next generation of leaders as I've just accepted a role over at Hawkins School to be their Assistant Director of Entrepreneurship there. So an entrepreneurial journey to continue inspiring all of you onto yours.
Awesome. Brian Tighe, born and raised in Cleveland. Went to university school, so I'm happy to see that they're here participating. Then went to Miami of Ohio. And then afterwards, I founded and invented my product, BevBench. And it's great to share our story with you guys because it's easier to relate to somebody that's in the thick of things right now. We don't know if our business is going to be successful, but we're going to try, and we got great traction. So I think sharing our story with you guys to get the next generation of entrepreneurs is really what it's all about.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being here. And I thought it might be cool to link together kind of this forum with the previous forum by kind of one question that came up a lot that a lot of people thought was important from the last forum, which was when founding a business, what would you consider more important, the idea part of the business or the execution? And just feel free to jump in whenever you want.
I personally think that execution is the most important thing. You've probably heard the saying before, the graveyard's probably one of the wealthiest locations on earth because it's full of ideas that never formulated. If those people were able to execute, they would be able to have successful businesses. So I definitely think it's about the execution.
I'm a firm believer in the execution as well because I think that's really where we learn about ourselves. We learn about our strengths, our passions, our weaknesses, where teams can be really helpful in supporting us through that process. But also, as you're implementing, often your idea changes. If you're out there piloting it with a prototype or trying to understand people's real needs, your idea often will shift and change from what it started out as. So I would often say, if you come forward with one idea, you're going to end up somewhere else after you start to execute, and that's where I think the real magic can happen.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's a both-and scenario. It's not an either or. I don't think they're dichotomous in nature. So the idea. So the problem with focusing way too much on the idea is you never work the idea. You have to get out there. You have to try things. Even if it's not the perfect idea, not a problem. You have to implement. You learn from implementation. You change your idea. And you're going to have tons of ideas. And it's going to be, well, at least for me, I can say for me, it's been very difficult to choose which idea that I want to run with. And that's the joy of this. That's where the empowerment in the learning and the education arises. So I think they're both important.
Absolutely. Yeah, like with our business, the idea of offering a safe, clean location to rest a beverage was always there. But, we have 100 different prototypes. And without that execution, we wouldn't have found the perfect prototype that our customers want.
Okay. So I'll ask as well, how did you get started as an entrepreneurship? What's your story of how you got involved?
Who wants to go first? I will. Okay. I grew up with entrepreneurs. My folks are entrepreneurs. I am used to it. I have seen it. It's comfortable to me. So when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I had the opportunity being in programming, being in web development, which way back then was, wow, you do web development? Somebody can make this for me? Yes, I can. It came very easily. I was very fortunate that the conditions around me were so just lifted me up and pushed me a little towards entrepreneurialism. And that's when I started my web development and software engineering company way back then. And it was, and I got the bug. So that's my story.
I was initially, in high school, I was exposed to entrepreneurship, but it wasn't until I had gone off to college and was part of a unique program that allowed me to design my own major that initially I was talking about nonprofit management because I knew I wanted to help people. I knew it was creative, but I didn't really know what else that meant. And I was lucky enough to have a great advisor who truly took the time to understand me and my motivations and help me articulate this whole world of social entrepreneurship. And I was lucky enough then in college to be on a co-founding team of students that founded a social enterprise. It was like an ethical apparel company where we were giving you an option to have your t-shirts made on a shirt that was supporting growth in sub-Saharan Africa, maybe instead of a sweatshop made tee. And really having that experience early on, at like 19 years old, being able to run a business and really learn the ins and outs, the challenges, all of the problems that you have to face day to day and have to solve for, helped me learn more about myself and how I could be a young change maker in that process. I think it's incredibly empowering to experience it, to go out there and do it. And that was really what initially put me on this whole path of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, growing up, I was always interested in it. I started off having a paper route when I was younger. Then I started a rototilling business in the spring. Advertising in the local plays program. And then just with our particular business now, we kind of had an aha moment when I was in college, and I kept seeing that need was still there, and that's kind of what's fueled us to, we won't stop until our product's in every bathroom in America is what we strive for. So that's kind of how we all got started with it. It's always been, like Mel said, you have the bug.
So would you say maybe that kind of when you start trying to be an entrepreneur, when you start having these experiences, that's a moment where you kind of realize that you have that entrepreneurship bug?
Yeah, I think, you just got to be open to trying different things and always be curious about, how does this business work? Why do they do this? And you kind of start uncovering where there's gaps and where there are needs. So I think that's extremely important for entrepreneurs.
So you're trying to figure out where the pain points are, where the customer needs are, and how to target those?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So how do you go about that as an entrepreneur? How do you find, where are certain markets that you might want to target, or certain projects or products you might want to develop?
I used to start with things that interested me. I think if you go about it and really dislike, at least this is my perception, if you don't like what you're doing, why bother? Why bother? Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part of it. Like what you're doing and make it a part of you. So that's where I've always started.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's important to also get out there and to talk to people, right? We often come from a place where we assume everybody has similar interests to us, or everyone would like what we are going to put out there into the world. But to actually go and have conversations with people, to do different surveys or interviews where you can empathize with them, where you can understand their needs and really what their pain points are, in order to start to design innovative solutions to those problems. That comes from the people aspect of it, right? Because when we know what value we're creating for someone else, we can then build around that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what do you think are some of the biggest hindrances to youth entrepreneurship?
I think in today's society, and it's not a bad thing, is our cell phones and technology. I want to urge you guys, because exactly what Alison was saying, that human element of starting a business is critical. So don't hide behind your cell phone all the time. Definitely use it as a tool to help get your message out there, but make sure you're getting face-to-face with people and figuring out what the problems are, what their needs are. So that's...
Another hindrance I've seen a lot within my work with Tigress has been sort of this assumption of what an entrepreneur looks like. Often we have this visual of an older white man at times, and at the truth of it, that's not necessarily who entrepreneurs are. I mean, we talk about entrepreneurship being a mindset that all people should really operate from, that's about problem solving and being innovative and creative thinkers. And to know that in a lot of our schools, even the different partners I have in the area, both at the high school and college level, there's a gap within the students where 1 to every 3 students is a woman in entrepreneurship programming. And to help start to break down those barriers, to help people understand, hey, we can all participate in this. There's something for all of us to get out of entrepreneurship, whether or not we want to start our own business. I think that we can apply that entrepreneurial thinking in all that we do. So I think that's a hurdle still for us to overcome with regards to the youth.
And you've definitely done a lot to overcome those hurdles, and it's fantastic work that you do. So from there, I guess, so there are a lot of hurdles to overcome, you know, as a woman getting into entrepreneurship, especially a young girl. Certainly, as you brought up, due to that idea of who an entrepreneur should be. But are there any like other hindrances that you think, other hurdles to overcome being a female entrepreneur?
That's a great question. I know, Mel, you've done a lot of work as well. I don't know if you would like to.
Are there any other hindrances?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are many hindrances, and you deal with them like you deal with I deal with them like I deal with any other issue I come up with, one at a time, and with my head held high. And
what hindrances have you had?
Well, there's absolutely sexism out there. There are, like Alison said it well. People don't expect women necessarily. Women do not fit our mind, you know, our perception about what an entrepreneur is typically. And so it's difficult for people to see something that they aren't used to seeing. So it's a pattern that they don't recognize. So it's very difficult sometimes for people to meet you at the level that perhaps you'd like to be met at as an entrepreneur. How's that? A little vague, but there's a lot of challenges, and you run with it and you work with it.
Definitely. So especially since you're talking about perceptions and that people aren't viewing women as belonging in that image, how do we shatter those perceptions? How do we crash through that ceiling and make sure that what you described isn't the case?
Mentorship. I think other women and girls need to see mentors out there, you know, breaking the mold. And it goes for anyone who does not fit that ideal of this entrepreneur picture, right? So we have to get out there. And it's not just women. It's not just African Americans. It's not just Hispanic Americans. It's everybody has to work towards this common goal of accepting a non-traditional entrepreneur. I think that's the most important thing.
Definitely mentorship and having those examples, those role models. Brian, did you have any role models as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. My father, you know, he's a dentist. Started his own practice, but really a lot of the things that he taught me, you know, kind of to be your own boss is really what, you know, starting at a young age, he instilled in me.
Okay. And any role models?
Sure. There was a number of people along my path who played different roles of either a mentor or someone to aspire to. When we were in university, I had my advisor who was excellent, but I also was working within that small enterprise we had founded, and we had fostered a partnership with Bono of U2 and his wife, Allie Hewson. And I loved that they were sort of a team, you know, kind of approaching this business as a team unit. And really to see her up there running the business, and they were kind of our parent company that we were buying blank t-shirts off of. And they were really building a whole sustainable supply chain in sub-Saharan Africa for a lot of people who didn't have ethical wages and opportunities to work. And so really watching them forging this path at an early age, and then continuing to go and do that work internationally with other groups, it was continually inspiring to me to work with people on the ground who either were really running their own businesses or really were moving through this process in a meaningful way, and that just continued to inspire me along the way.
Great. So for all, I think for all of us in the work that you've done with Bono and with Sir Richard Branson and all that is really incredible. But from our perspective as youth, how do we get to the point that we can work on such incredible projects with people like Bono and Sir Richard Branson and others?
It's a great question, and it's funny. I don't like to talk about the celebrities because we get caught up in that stuff, and they're just people too, But what I've really learned to do is to put myself out there to really forge these opportunities. I had seen in the news that Richard Branson had set up this essentially support hub for entrepreneurs in the Caribbean. And so I just had it on my radar. I thought, you know what, I'm interested in that. I was working in Guatemala in the time, but I ended up looking to see if they had any job openings. And I had received an email when they did have an opening over in Jamaica for the expansion of their business. And I actually missed the deadline of that application because it closed at 5 p.m. UK time, and I was in Guatemala, and I was so frustrated with myself. I remember I was like, how could you miss this opportunity? And then I sat down and I said, well, I'm just going to find someone to email my application to. So I went through all these different emails trying to find the right person. I ended up finding Richard Branson's secretary's email from a newsletter 3 years previously, and I thought, well, I'm just going to try it. So I sent it to her, and in the end, because it came, she passed it on to the right people who needed to read that application, and because it had come from that woman, they actually paid a bit more attention to the application. So it was really a lesson for me in persistence and really continuing to put yourself out there and know that we're really capable of achieving a lot of things, and also not necessarily to get swept up in the celebrity of things. You know, celebrities bring along resources and awareness that they can create, but on a local level, I mean, we can really shake things up ourselves and don't necessarily need that endorsement to move our enterprises forward.
So I'll shift a little bit to a local level. So I guess Cleveland's kind of an interesting environment to be an entrepreneur. It isn't the Silicon Valley, you know, it isn't Silicon Alley, which is New York. But what do you think's unique about the way that entrepreneurship and business functions in our city?
You know, I think Cleveland, you know, first and foremost, great city, up and coming. I think a lot of entrepreneurs gravitate towards it because of the opportunities that are presenting itself. You know, rent is relatively cheap. You know, relatively inexpensive to start up a company here. So I think Cleveland's got a lot going for it in that aspect. And then just also the people. You know, there's great energy around the city. You go to places like Ohio City and Tremont, you know, it's crawling with entrepreneurs and artists and people wanting to do projects that mean something to them and to their community.
I think we also have a lot of resources here that people should be aware of, like Jumpstart, Launch House, Bizdom. Give me some more. Lots of them. Flash starts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of resources to. Yeah.
And also knowing that, you know, when we grow up in a place, we start to develop our own networks, right? It made sense for me to return back to Cleveland to pilot my own business because I have a network and a variety of contacts here that allow us to have greater access to resources and people who are willing to help support you, you know, your parents' friends or the people you went to school with, alumni from your old schools. Those are really great places to start when you're really trying to get something off the ground. Mm-hmm. So I think utilizing where you have the most kind of human capital can be a really resourceful place too.
And it's amazing who comes out of the woodwork when they hear about you starting a business. You know, your third grade teacher's son who you hadn't seen in 10 years knows somebody that you could be talking to. I mean, it's amazing. Really, your network that you're creating right now will help you in your ventures later in life. Mm-hmm.
So where would you recommend that teens start if you're going to start a business? Do you jump right into seed capital and the launch house and the flash start stuff? Do you try to bootstrap it? What's a good starting point?
Well, I think it depends on your venture, really. Each startup, respectively, has different needs on their own. Ours, for instance, I did everything out of our basement. I mean, really bootstrapped it. You know, we weren't in a position to be spending a lot of money on prototypes and everything. So I think it depends on the type of business that you're starting. And again, talking to a mentor or somebody who's been down this road before is a good place to start. And then they'll let you know if you should be bootstrapping it or raising capital or something. So I think that's the best place to start, is talking to somebody that's done it.
Because they can also help to pinpoint roadblocks or obstacles that they face and help you navigate around those earlier so that you don't waste as much time on the front end. If you're able to start from a position where you're informed and have a lot of resources, then at that point I think you can continue to do that in a lean way. I think there's maybe this misconception that we have to have people invest in us in order to start our own business, but really, to do things bootstrapped or in a lean startup kind of way. There's a lot of opportunities for us to launch we talk about the minimum viable product, right? Just start with the first piece. We spend so much time imagining this whole big program or this, big service we're going to offer, when in reality it might just be a small piece, and that's where you start. You start with that and then start to grow. And I think that's the best place to begin.
Yeah. So if you want to build the empire, you start with the small city.
That's right. Or a house.
Yeah. The house. That's a much better analogy, yes. And on the topic of mentorship, because certainly having a mentor is very important, how would you recommend going out and finding these mentors, to get that sort of help?
I'd stop up at I'd stop up at local wisdom. I'd look around. I'd Google entrepreneurship Cleveland, and start calling people. That's what I do. Talk to your high school.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows somebody that owns a business or is starting a business or works for a great company. Somebody that you trust is always a good place to start, and any type of guidance. And then they might not be the right person, but they can point you into the right direction to the right person.
I think as well, maybe reaching out to your alumni directors at your schools and to say, hey, I'm interested in something specific. Maybe it's art, maybe it's technology, but to let your director at your school know you would like to have a mentor. I'm sure that there's opportunities for them to shoot an email out to their alumni pool and say, hey, we have a student interested in some mentorship. Anyone in this space willing to give, a couple hours a month to sit down? I think you'll be shocked about the amount of resources from your school and past alumni who might be willing to help.
Okay, and I think we're gonna close our discussion here before we have Q&A with just one final question. What skill would you say it's most important for an entrepreneur, especially a young entrepreneur in today's society, to have?
Communication.
Communication?
I think humility is a good one. I can't tell you how many customers we went to when we were starting off that just kind of laughed at us. And you look back on it and just kind of laugh. And if we stopped there, our product would never make it. So I think that's a big one to have. Be able to just laugh at your mistakes.
I would say creativity. I think it's critical for problem solving. It's critical for looking at the world differently. It's critical if we're going to go out there and shake some things up in this world, and to approach them in a much different way than maybe people have historically. So creativity would be mine.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to pass it off to one of my colleagues on the forum. We're going to take a brief break, pass it off to Dom, and we'll be back with Q&A in a moment.
Hello, my name is Dominic Zagara. I'm a senior at Shaker Heights High School, as Phil mentioned. This ends the official moderated portion of this forum. For the next 30 minutes, you guys will be able to interact with our panelists and ask your own questions. Although Anthony did make some statements about turning your phone on silent, which we do ask that you turn your phone on silent. Please use your phone. Use your phone for Snapchat. You can take pictures of all of our panelists. Follow us on Twitter. I'd like to give a special shout out to Julio Armenzi. Is Julio here? He's favorited almost all of our tweets that we've sent out so far. So thanks to Julio. You tweeted you too? All right. So as you brainstorm questions in your head, two other forum council members will have microphones. So I would like to pass this back to Phil to call for the first question. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Let's see, who are our mic holders? We have, great. Someone have a question back there? Or, Kirsten.
When you started your entrepreneur, when did you think that?
Stand up.
Oh,
sorry.
When you started your entrepreneur, when did you think that this is I really want to do this? for my whole life? Because I know you probably had other goals you probably wanted to do, but like when you was growing up, like as a teen, like as a young person, when did you think like this is really I want to do for my whole life?
I think for me, I saw the need, and then it was just reinforced every time I'd go to a bar or restaurant and my product was not there. So every single time, I would see it, that would kind of really reinforce the idea. And then when we landed our first big customer, it's kind of like, oh, I think I could quit my job and do this for a living. So, that's kind of how it happened with us.
I think when I was originally in school and really realizing that entrepreneurship is an incredibly effective way to create social change, and that I knew I wanted to see some change in the world, and that if we applied this kind of thinking to problems like poverty, homelessness, hunger, climate change, whatever, that we could really see some changes in the world. And so I was really compelled by approaching that from a sustainable place. And whether or not I'm necessarily leading the enterprise to do that, as long as I'm part of kind of an innovative space that is moving forward entrepreneurial thinking in that way, I really believe we can get there and we can create some change in the world.
Mm-hmm. I have the same feelings as you about this. I feel it's an empowerment tool. It's how do you make a change in the world? Is it by leading, doing your own thing? When did I get there? Not in high school. Mm-hmm. Not in high school. But if you get there in high school,
and you can definitely, have a full-time job, and we were doing our project on the side as well. And then once it got to a point where we were able to do our project full-time, that's really when I noticed that it could be a business.
Okay. And you can just wave either of our mic holders over if you have a question. Do we have a question over there? Do we? We do not. Oh, we do. Mm-hmm.
I would like to know, could each of you tell us a little bit about your businesses?
Go ahead.
So the name of our company is Topwater Marketing, and we create functional, interactive marketing products. In particular, our current project is BevBench, which it's a functional marketing product you put above urinals in restrooms to offer users a safe, clean location to rest their beverage. So no more resting your beer on the back of a dirty urinal, or if you go to the gym and you have your water bottle under your armpit. And we sell that ad space to beverage companies in particular. And also we're working with stadiums and concert venues, and we sell that ad space.
Awesome. So with Tigress, we are an empowerment program for girls in high school and college that offers workshops, coaching, and club experiences that really puts them through an entrepreneurial experience where they're coming up with an idea and then putting it into action through that experience. So the intent is to really learn about your passions, your skills, what your future goals are, what kind of impact you can ultimately make in the world by really launching a social change project in either a weekend or throughout the club spaces that we offer.
Mm-hmm. And We Can Code It teaches people how to code. We have a special focus on diversity in technology because there's a problem there. Everything from K to 12 through adult coding boot camps where you can learn to program in 3 months' time.
Yeah. I'll keep mine.
You can introduce yourself as well.
Oh, my name's George from Rocky River High School. What kind of jobs did you guys have during high school and like college?
My favorite was an archaeologist for a summer. That was fun. I was an EMT when I was thinking about becoming a doctor. Yeah. And stuff, lots of stuff, lots of little things.
I worked at a golf camp. I was a golf instructor. That was in high school, and then after college, I still remember my first job. I worked for a freight brokerage company, and I just wore a little headset and made calls all day long, and I knew that's what I didn't want to do with my life. So I was there for probably 5 months, and I just got up and left. I couldn't do it.
I remember working in a community gym when I was in college, or in high school, and also was part of a dance company that worked with people with disabilities, and I worked to develop out some programming with the youth who wanted to dance ultimately, and we had done a lot of work there. So it was, I guess, a creative space. It was a female-led enterprise as well, so maybe she also was an influence, a potential role model and mentor early on in that process too.
MC Square STEM. I want to know what gave you guys the idea to actually start a business?
Well, I began really throughout my journey, as I mentioned, when I was working internationally. I was noticing how entrepreneurship was really empowering people. Specifically, when I was in Guatemala, we were working with a lot of Mayan women who were really being trained to sell things like water filters, solar lamps, eyeglasses, things that people wouldn't have access to in rural areas, but were really beneficial for their health or their economic well-being, and then in turn made some profit for that woman, who as a woman didn't really have a lot of opportunities to work outside the home or hadn't been educated. And initially she would come in really timid and was like, there's no way I could be an entrepreneur. There's no way anyone would ever respect me to be a leader. And within 6 months' time, really identifying problems in her community and realizing she could bring real solutions out to her fellow community members, watching her move through that process and understand more about herself and what worth she had, her confidence went through the roof. She really recognized that she could impact her family and more broadly her community. So it was really reinforced through a lot of those experiences that there was value in this work, and I felt passionate about it, and it was something I wanted to continue doing for really the next generation of young women, positioning these opportunities for everyone to find more about themselves. So that was initially how I decided to start Tigress.
For me, it was a hot and humid day, and I rested my beverage on the back of a urinal like I had a million times before. And this time, a drop of condensation just dropped into my beverage, and that's what gave me the idea. It's crazy. It was my aha moment. And then 100 prototypes later, we finally came up with our product. So
we had the same reaction at the table we heard it the first time.
Like, oh. For me, with We Can Code It, we were at hanging out at Launch House actually, and people would come up to me. I'd do some presentations, and people would come up to me and knew I could code, and they'd ask me, "How do I do this? How do I do this?" And most of these people were women. We just informally started a group. I said, you know what? Let's take all these questions at once, and I'll teach you. So it ended up being just once a week, a couple of weeks program that women would join in. And it was one of those, the wind was at my back and sort of pushing me in this direction because people kept asking for, what about kids? Oh yeah, let's do something. Oh, now let's do this. I agree. So I was listening and responding is really what I was doing.
So listening and responding was a huge part of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm Maddie from Rocky River. What was the hardest part of starting your business?
Oh, so many things to choose from.
You know, the one thing I did talk about was the importance of your network. I think when you're first starting off, and your network, particularly your friends and family, might not see that vision right away. So it was tough, you know, explaining to my family, I'm going to quit my job and pursue this. They thought I was crazy. But now that they kind of see the light and they see that we have customers and there's a really big opportunity, you know, they've jumped on board. So at times it could get lonely. It really can, but you just got to keep fighting through it.
The challenge I first had when I started up was that my market wasn't really the right niche. I initially was working with arts-based groups because I thought, oh, great, there's going to be a bunch of creative girls sitting in these arts programs. It's a perfect connection. But I was therefore selling to their parents. And a lot of parents didn't understand what I meant by entrepreneurship, how it was a tool for empowerment, why they should be signing their daughters up. And so it was at that point that I realized I needed to shift my market, that I had to pivot if I was going to do this. And that was when I started talking to some other entrepreneurship directors at high schools and colleges in the area, and learned that there was this gap, that they didn't have as many women signing up for their programs, and as well that there wasn't a lot of curriculum around social entrepreneurship. It was maybe more traditional entrepreneurial things. So to be able to offer my programs in those spaces where we could run a workshop or have a club space provided so much more value for those entrepreneurship directors who then were using their budgets to pay for the curriculum. So I went from more of a business to consumer model to more of a business to business model.
I'm going to echo Brian's statement, having understanding that not everybody's going to have the same perspective. That was my biggest challenge, and to still go forth and try to be, have eyes open while going forth at the same time as sometimes having to deal with criticism or a lack of support. Correct.
Absolutely.
Marion from Rocky River, and I was just wondering about, did your family initially support your decision to become an entrepreneur, or is that something you had to earn?
I think
Thanks.
You know, at the end of the day, my parents are wonderful, and they're going to support whatever I do. You know, I think they definitely had some qualms about it at first, and you know, now that they see what's going on with our business and then the customers that we're talking to, it's much easier for them to support it fully. So,
my parents are supportive. They both are entrepreneurs as well. And I really valued that support, especially after working in other countries where it was often, we call it a kind of a risk-averse environment, where a lot of their families and friends thought they were completely crazy for wanting to go out there and start up something they were passionate about or really felt the need for. They just wanted them to do something traditional, you know, like go be a banker or a lawyer or a doctor, something we know that will bring home a paycheck regularly, right? And a huge value for them, they would often say, to be able to sit in a room of other people who are called crazy all the time means so much, you know, to know that we actually aren't crazy for doing this. That there is value in this work. And so if parents or your direct kind of peers aren't necessarily supportive, go out there and find people who are.
Yes.
Because that can definitely help move it forward.
Agreed. Yeah.
And they'll see how passionate you are about it, and they'll jump on board pretty quick. So.
Hi, I'm Ryan from University School. I was wondering, what accomplishment or segment of your career are you most proud of?
I think for us is getting our patents, and then landing that first big order was something we were really proud of. We did a huge order for Yingling Brewing Company, and talking with them, they ended up doubling their order, which means I had to order all this inventory. I mean, we were running around with our heads chopped off. It was great to see, you know, my aunts and uncles, my grandma, my girlfriend's family, my parents all come together and, you know, kind of work on our assembly line. I mean, it was crazy that we were able to get this order done in time, and without their support, we couldn't have done it. So I'm really proud of that moment.
That's cool. Oh, I am proud of, just taking the risk, going out there and taking the risk. I'm most proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just recently, a couple weeks ago, running through our impact data to understand, what we actually have accomplished with Tigress, and the data was showing that 92% of the young women who've participated in our programs feel more confident implementing their ideas and being an influencer of social change. And when I actually saw the numbers of that, I was really shocked. I was like, yeah, I know this happens. We are in the moment, and the girls walk away and are completely, invigorated with passion for this work. But to really see it in kind of hard quantitative data, I thought, wow, I actually am accomplishing what I set out to do. And it was sort of that aha moment that I hope my girls experience in the programs that I felt like I was experiencing there in that moment, that we can really accomplish these visions we set out for.
That's awesome.
Hi, I'm Lisa Alison, a counselor at MC Squared STEM High School. And this gets back to the theme of risk. So what advice would you have for high school students or young people who feel they need to get locked into a college major or a career early on? Or they're afraid to get stuck in a career that's not a good fit?
For me, my major in college changed about 4 times. And I was a great student. I got good grades, but I never wanted to settle for something that I wasn't going to be passionate about. So I think, be open to new ideas, be open to new suggestions. And you guys still have a lot of growing to do, and you'll continue to grow in college, and your interests will change. And I think just having an open mind and seeing what's out there will help you make that decision.
I think as well, no matter what you do in school, no matter what major you're pursuing, what kind of coursework you're taking, making whatever you're passionate about or your interests are relevant to those projects. Often you'll be, given an opportunity to, write a project or interview someone or put together a thesis. If you have those opportunities, cater them specifically to your interests so that you're out there talking to people that you are able to learn from, or that you're researching topics that might be relevant to whatever you want to do, so that you really take control of your own education in that way. And I think there are actually a lot of programs out there now that you can design your own major, and if that's something of interest, finding a great advisor or a counselor who can help you figure out that process would be something I'd encourage as well.
Yeah, it's hard for me to, how can you get locked in at, in your 20s even? I think the idea that you can always change, you can always learn more, you can always adapt is so much more important than saying, this is what I'm going to do. It's not taking every day and that's not being flexible, that's not having this agile, scientific mindset about one's life. I would say, what do? You realize that things can change, that things will change. If you want to take a variety of things, then do so. Do take a variety of classes. I like that you created your own major. That's fantastic. If kids are uncertain about what should I choose something you're passionate about and give it your all. That's what I would say. And if that's the price of admission, right, to life is sort of, oh, here's my degree. You can change along the way. You can add new things, and just be passionate about what you do and give it your all.
One other piece I might add as well is shifting from this thinking of what do I want to be when I grow up to what value can I add to the world? What value can I create in the world? What change do I want to see in the world? Changing that question and then figuring out a path that can get you there might be a better way to approach that.
Well said, yeah.
For the young entrepreneurs in the room, what are some problems that we're going to face? When we're out there running our businesses, and Mr. Tighe talked about the humility. What are some of the problems that we're going to face, or ways that we should prevent, or that we're scared to face those problems? What should we look out for as far as problems that we're going to face out in the real world?
Thanks.
It's something new every day. There's problems that we face that not in a million years I would have thought would have come up. You just got to be really flexible, and call on your education from the past, call on past jobs, your experiences, talking to people that might have gone through whatever problem has arisen. But definitely being flexible, because the problems are all across the board, what's going to come up. So good question.
I would say embracing failures is important. We talk a lot in entrepreneurship about, there's really no failures, they're just challenges, they're opportunities to pivot, there's ways to work around everything, and to approach that knowing you're going to run into things that might not be successful. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to stop or that your business has failed. It's really kind of redirecting you to the next step. It's sort of that launching point to where you need to get to next. So walking into those experiences, embracing said failures for what ultimately can be growth.
Echo that one. Failure. Get used to it. It's going to happen. It happens to everybody. And it's okay, as long as you pick yourself back up, brush yourself off, and say, what have I learned from this? And then it becomes a growth experience.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Tyson, and what's the most important thing to remember when starting a business?
Can you say that again?
What's the most important thing to remember when starting a business?
Your company's name.
Don't forget
then
that.
your
it's
own.
Pretty
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to remember why you started the business in the first place. Some people start business for money, but eventually, money can only motivate you so far. If you have the true passion for your product, that's going to be all the motivation you need to see your product and your business succeed, and then the money will come, will follow. But I think the most important thing to remember is why you started off doing that business. I think money can only cloud it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, remembering the resources you have around you, remembering that you don't have to do it all on your own, being able to bring in other people, ask for help. Mm-hmm. That kind of back to the humility piece, but also the communication piece, where we understand how to communicate the mission, what we care about, but also what our needs are. To be able to say, hey, I can't do all of this. I need to bring in a graphic designer, or I need to call my cousin who actually does web design, or being able to utilize resources that you have around you so that you can go further faster.
Mm-hmm. I'd say not everything's going to be a straight line up. You're gonna have a lot of waves in there. So just keep the big picture in mind, that there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. It evens out, and it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, so I hope that you've enjoyed today's forum. It's been a great chat with all of you. Thank you so much for coming here today. Let's just give them a round of applause. So start a business, and I'm going to pass it off to Sophia for our closing remarks.
Like Philip said, my name is Sophia Zupanc, and I'm currently a senior at Gilmore Academy. First, I'd just like to thank all of our wonderful panelists and our moderator. They did a great job today. But then even more so, I'd just like to thank all of you for being in attendance and being so active through both your questions and your social media involvement. If you're interested in joining the Youth Forum, you can grab an application outside. And I just want to remind you all also to please fill out your survey before you leave, because that really helps us make the forums better for you in the future. I hope you enjoyed your afternoon here at the City Club, and with that, the forum is now closed.